Hello again. Welcome back to Crossroads of Cognizance. I am one half of this party, Dahlia Rose. I own a crystal shop out in Woodbridge, Virginia, and we're holding down the fort on the East Coast. And here with me today, we have
Katrina Rasbold, holding down the West Coast. I am the co-owner of Crossroads Metaphysical Store in Shingle Springs, California. We're a full-on witch store, conjure shop, crystal store. Got a little bit of everything, and boy, has it been a week! We are excited to bring everything that's been going on at Crossroads into this broadcast.
Yes. So every week, if you're the first time, we are here to talk about what's going on in the East, what's going on in the West, and meet somewhere in the middle. And we're sure that you've been impacted just as much as we have globally, personally. And so as we're discussing different topics, if you have questions, if you have comments, we're building this community. And so we want you to participate in the comments section. We are live on Facebook and on YouTube. So go ahead and commingle and let us know that you're here. And other than that, we'll go ahead and get started. So
what happened with you? Now, I'll tell you, we came out from under that Mercury retrograde like a storm. And speaking of storms, it's an overcast, wonderful rainy day today. We finally got some rain last night. What is going on your side of the world?
So the cold has moved in. Hooray! Like, I am very much a fall person, but this is the least way. And yes, it was like a fog lifted as soon as Mercury retrograde was done. It was like, wait a minute, where was I? It was like waking up from a long death sleep. I mean, it was wild. Now, as far as like what's going on in the store, I think that we had some very synchronistic things going on both in the East and the West, right? We chatted a little bit before the show. And coming through that retrograde, one of the themes, as we discussed beforehand, was protection. But it goes a little deeper than that. So Katrina, you had started mentioning some things about the candle work that you were doing and the conjure work that you were doing regarding justice.
Yeah, we had a lot of fiery wall of protection candles going out there, and people were feeling really vulnerable. And this happens a lot during the retrograde because with retrograde, you're looking back on things from the past. And so you tend to get involved with old mistakes you've made that rear their ugly heads again and come back to haunt you because you didn't completely put them to rest. Sometimes we've got people from the past coming back. So it's very much an RE. Retrograde means retro, in the past. What did you do wrong? What did you do in an incomplete fashion? And what do you need to fix? And sometimes we feel like we need protection from ourselves and from the choices that we made. And so there was a lot of fiery wall of protection, but we also had a lot of people looking for justice candles. And I'm really careful with those justice candles. I had a mentor that used to say, justice splatters. When you invoke justice, you need to make absolutely sure your ducks are in a row. And so we had a lot of people that were going through court cases. I don't know if maybe the courts were backed up due to COVID and suddenly they had this huge rush of cases that were being heard or what happened. Yeah. We just had a lot of people in civil suits and in criminal suits coming through, and they all wanted justice candles. And I had to stop some of them and say, are you totally sure that's what you want? Because people tend to equate justice with what they think is right.
Right.
Without pulling back to say, well, you honestly did break the law there. So even if if it's a matter, and they'll say, well, it's a matter of what's right and what's wrong. Well, no, it's really not. It's a matter of what did you do and what is the prosecutable angle for this? Right. So if you want me to invoke justice, if you want me to invoke legal justice, it's going to go according to the law. If you want me to invoke God's justice, you better make sure that you're right there too.
Absolutely. So it almost sounds like it'd be better to pursue the kind angle as opposed to certain justice for whatever's going on, because justice is blind, and it's the letter of the law that that candle invokes. I think that's what I'm hearing you say.
It does. And you know, it's also a matter of focus on the outcome that you want. If you don't want to go to jail, but you did something wrong, don't invoke the justice candle. Invoke something like the Abre Camino candle that has this open roads, or something that there's even one called Contra la Ley, which is against the law or away from the law to keep you off the radar. So make sure you're burning the right candle in a justice situation so that justice is your friend and not something you want to not dance with at that time. And you know, justice isn't just about court cases. Sometimes people will burn a justice candle when they've been wronged in some way, or when they're feeling resentful in some way, and they want to invoke karmic justice. And that's also really dangerous, because that's another concept that just gets everywhere when you invoke it.
Well, and I think that we touched on this last time. No, we touched on this in your, I'm sorry, which is at the crossroads, when someone was asking about working with magic or energy or whatever the case was, and they sort of lost control of the situation.
Yes, I remember that.
It's the same,
yeah.
I think, is what you're saying. You know, when it comes to manifestation, or, you know, working with candles, it's gonna splatter. It's gonna get everywhere.
It will. And in that case, I believe the woman she was trying to expedite the work of a contractor for her friend. And the contractor ended up getting injured. And you could say, well, maybe they got injured because they were having to work too fast and not pay attention to what they're doing. And so there is blowback sometimes if you're not careful with the words that you use. And anytime you get into the field of magic and pulling strings to change a situation, especially if it's a situation outside of yourself, you know, you really have to be careful with what you say.
Well, but you know, what a great opportunity to expand on our knowledge, right? Because what is promoted out there is this sense of, you know, you can have whatever you want, and you can be as effective in magic and manifestation as you want to be, but there's nothing out there that talks about how it impacts or influences other people's lives. I had a conversation about this with someone who, you know, wanted to win the lottery. I was like, yeah, you and like 8 billion other people. so you have to work against 8 billion different energy things going on.
You do.
Just to get to that single moment where you are the winner.
I have a lot of people that come to me wanting gambling magic.
Yeah.
And gambling magic it's one of the few magics that doesn't work. It'll probably never work. And it is because the free will of all of those other people who want the same thing that you want pulls against everything that you're doing. Now, in Christy's situation, Christy didn't do anything wrong. I want to be very clear about that. If we get into this thing of analysis as paralysis, we'll never do any magic. And I don't believe that's how we're meant to live life. I just think that when we step up to the cauldron, part of our knowledge is that we are taking the accountability and the responsibility for whatever rolls out when we do that magic. And we can never be completely safe. It's going to happen. All of us have done work that had unexpected results. And it's just a matter of refining and rethinking what we're doing to try to pull up as few casualties as we can. And, you know, sometimes the casualty is in not doing anything at all. You know, if you don't work that magic, is the outcome going to be worse?
Right. And there's no way to ever really know.
Right.
And this applies, it grows so much larger than magic. I remember in my first energy healing class, Solaris energy healing technique, the teacher opened with a story of working for someone who forced him to work through the weekend, and he spent that weekend working, but fixated on how his boss took this opportunity to go on a vacation, and he just wanted to spend time with his family, but he couldn't. So his boss was on his vacation working on a roof and fell off the ladder and broke his leg. And he was like, when my teacher made it a point to say, when we enter into energy work, you are taking responsibility for some things. He said, did I cause that to happen? Who knows? But I certainly added to the probability with my focus of how much I wanted revenge. And so with all of that said, that's the implication. Whether you're doing magic or energy work, it doesn't really matter what you believe in. This is our create our reality moment that we're stepping into.
Absolutely. And it doesn't matter the label you put on it. If you're saying a prayer in a church for something to happen, you
It's
are
spelled.
also, yeah, you are responsible for what comes of that. Even if you don't accept that responsibility, it doesn't stop you being responsible. And I mean, an example is, how many times do you see somebody who has a job they like, they really enjoy it, and then something happens, something shifts. They get a new supervisor, they have suddenly coworkers that they don't get along with, and they start to not love the job. And as soon as they don't love the job and start to get angry about it, something happens to take that job away. And it happens all the time. I could always see it coming with my kids, for one thing. If they had a job that they were really, and my kids aren't babies, I mean, I'm talking 20s and 30s, but they get a job and they just are really hating it. I can sit here and count, what, 2 weeks, 3, and that job is going to be gone.
Yep. Well, when we're so used to just saying, I hate this. I wish, I wish I was out of here, not thinking that, yeah, you may actually be out of there shortly.
Yeah. And we put energy into our words. Our words have power. And
Absolutely.
when we're especially if we're talking to people about it and saying things like, I don't know what to do. I really hate this job. I wish I didn't have to go. You're putting intention out there in the world, and that's going to fuel not loving that job. If you're instead approaching of, hey, I really like this job. There's some elements I'd love to have change, but I want to keep this job and I'm excited about continuing forward. The words you say have power.
Absolutely. And speaking of that power, we can segue here into the other aspect that was happening on both the East and the West Coast, is this phenomena of emotional labor. I sort of on the East Coast had it from the standpoint of my people that I work with going through emotional labor for their significant others or loved ones, and yours was from the healer's perspective.
Right.
So I know in my case, I was having conversations with a couple of different people about sort of holding space for their partners and being like, yes, I want to be there for you, and their partners being like, you have so much going on, I just don't want to burden you. And they're like, but that's part of my love for you. That's it's part of what we're here for. And in the case of children as well, parents kind of pushing their kids to talk and wanting to be that safe emotional space, but then turning around and not offering that vulnerability back and saying, okay, well, I'm the strong person here. I don't have, you're not my person to give this to. In fact, I'll just hold it in and let it pile up and tighten up and give me issues, and go through this emotional labor on my own. What were you seeing, Katrina?
To address quickly what you said, one of the toughest things about human life and human connection is there is no connection without vulnerability.
Nope.
You can't have it. You have to be vulnerable to somebody to be in I would even say, worthwhile relationship with them, whether it's a friend, a child, a parent, a lover, a boss. You have to be vulnerable in some way to that person in order to achieve any degree of connectedness. And part of that connectedness usually comes down to the energy exchange. And you and I have had long conversations about energy exchange and what that looks like. And the way that I work my classes is on energy exchange. What does the class mean to you? And what do you feel you need to give in return? And I feel like that's so important in our relationships. I just had a conversation with my friend Tamara today about how so often in relationships we set out by giving a lot of ourselves because we don't value who we are. So we value what we give and what we do. And we give that as currency. And then we find that we're not getting that back in return.
And then comes the resentment.
And so we expect people to treat us the way that we treat them when it's possible that's not their love language. That's not how they share and connect. That's not where they make themselves vulnerable. And there will always be those people who are perfectly willing to take advantage of what you're able to give from a making yourself vulnerable perspective. So I really think that it's so important that we see that stop sign that says, I'm getting to the place that I'm going to start to feel resentful if I don't start getting more back. Now you can use your words and say, hey, I need this, this, and this from you in order to feel safe with you, in order to continue giving to the degree that I am. I need these things. You can use your words like a big person and say that. But you can also adjust by just not giving as much.
Right.
And
pull
just
back.
Because you can, you can only change you. And so you can say, I can feel if I do this, I'm going to resent this. And that's what was showing up in my practice a lot, was people who have overgiven and don't know how to get themselves out of that space. And one of the places they're overgiving, it's not just in, I'm going to cook your food for you. I'm going to, work, do tasks that are outside of my job description in order to be the star employee. It's not just those things, although they're there. It's also stuff like just holding space for friends. And just sharing time and feeling like, I can't carry your emotional burden anymore. This is really rough. And I got kind of shocked this week when one of my friends told me that her cat had died. She'd had to have her cat put down. It's like, oh, I didn't know that Boo died. What happened? And she's telling me about how the cat got sick and all this other stuff. And I said, well, why didn't you tell me? And she says, oh, well, it was when your fire was happening. And this doesn't compare to your fire. And I thought, wow, I felt like she didn't trust me to hold that space for her.
Right.
I was having trauma, but that doesn't change that her fucking cat died.
I think one of the things I'm recognizing in our conversation is, people don't know how to say, hey, do you have space for this? Right. Like I've seen it promoted on the internet. Ask, do you have emotional bandwidth to handle this? But it's not that simple to preface what you want to say. And then we're also dealing with capability. And I think that people think that they should have some sort of blanket capability in all situations, when your capability, especially since 2020, is going to be moment to moment at this stage.
It really will. And everybody has their fragile point where they just can't take any more. And one of the things that I experienced in regard to the fire, especially, is there was trauma, and we were dealing with the feelings that came along with that. But I felt like I had to make other people feel better about how I was doing, or they would ask me, so how are you really? And look at you with the tilted head.
Right. Okay, now I'm going to go behind the back door and see what's really back here.
Can I see behind the curtain here? And so I felt like I had to carry their emotional baggage too, of how they're responding to what happened to me. And I think that a lot of times when we're holding space for other people, we do get wrapped up in the semantics of it and the trying to balance of it, rather than just being present for them.
And trusting yourself to have the right response.
And I just want to go out on a limb here and say that since the very beginning, one of the things I valued most about our friendship is the way that you show up.
Oh.
And you know, a lot of times we've got those friends that you can tell that they're just phoning it in. You can tell that they're there because, okay, well, I don't have enough friends, and yeah, I like you well enough, so I'm here. I'm in your friend pool. But no, every single time you show up and you're very present, and I don't think there's ever been a time that I've said, you know, hey, can you hold space for me, that you weren't there plugged in 100%. And I just really appreciate that. I hope you don't go over the resentment level.
No, I can't visualize that. I don't know what that looks like. But I mean, I absolutely 1000% feel the same, and couldn't have said it better myself. You know, I definitely feel the evenness of the energy exchange between us, just sort of like a this plastic, like, okay, now you take the baton and then I'll take it. And you know, it's not like that at all.
Yeah.
And something that I'm recognizing as we're talking about you to make people feel better about your situation, I'm recognizing that there are people out there that feel like they can't be happy in their situation, and so they'll downplay what they're going through.
Yes.
It's like, oh, God forbid anybody know that I am actually happy. Let me, you know, when I'm asked, oh, you know, and then watching it and just being like, wait a minute, I just saw you laughing and joking, and what just happened? And I think to some degree, I think that's a little bit of a trauma response too, right? Like that's fawning. I think when we look at the traumatic spectrum, I actually had a client do that as soon as her boyfriend walked in the room, and I was like, oh, that is alarming. That you have to make yourself small. What's happened?
Yes. And you know, so often what we see too in friends, not just in our clients, but in our friendships, and sometimes from very enlightened, what we perceive as enlightened people, is that they become completely different people when they're in the room with their significant other. And that is a really big trouble sign.
Yeah.
If you're not being your, you know, in one of those cases, you're not being your full self.
Right.
And I really get nervous when I see friends that completely change when that partner isn't around.
Right. Well, and here we are talking about emotional labor again. You know, there may be some thoughts around, well, this person couldn't handle the full version of me, and so I have to tamp down what I am doing, and the vulnerability of it all. Do you actually want to be connected in a situation where you can't be your full self? I had come across some, I'm reading the gene codes now, which is like another variation of astrology and deeper things that I'm probably going to lose my mind over. But it talked about this concept of not being able to be emotionally vulnerable as dishonesty. And I think when you present it to people like that, because nobody wants to be dishonest, well, most people don't, then it takes a whole nother spin around the block. It's like, oh, well, you know, if I'm being dishonest, I don't want to be in that headspace. How do I turn the car around? And if it means shifting a relationship, losing a relationship, changing it, you have to understand that there is a huge payoff for that. That shift, if it's a positive shift, it's an opportunity to love all of you. You know, letting that person in means the same risk. One way or the other, it's either going to be good or bad, but they get to love that much more of you because it's like you found a secret door in the cabin. Look, Narnia's back here. You know, there's more to it.
And you know, there's always going to be people we don't show our whole selves to, and this is something different. We all have facets of our personality that, you know, each person that we're connected to might get 80% of us if they're lucky. I mean, I am not going to show, for instance, my sexuality to my kids or to my parents, you know, or my grandma. And so that's a part of myself that's reserved for very specific relationships and specific people. And even my spirituality, even though it permeates who I am and what I do, there might be some situations where I'm not, wearing a big, Flava Flav pentacle here and flashing, the witch. And so it's not that we have to be transparent all the time.
No.
To each person, but it's more that our core being shouldn't shift.
Right. Absolutely. And I feel like you were speaking to safety as an issue, right? Like,
And protection.
Yep. Which is our very next, not going to go to some regions of the world, like you said, with your Flavor Flav pentacle, expecting to walk out of there unharmed. And it's unfortunately the same in some circles of friends or in their homes or wherever the case is. So as we segue into the protection piece, you had mentioned some interesting things in the beginning of this in terms of the fire protection. Could you speak more to that candle?
Fiery wall of protection is about, it works with angelic energy. Jophael and Michael, depending on where you are the two that I work primarily with for my fiery wall. And so it's erecting a wall of fire around you is the visualization. And I do a ritual for people that are under extreme attack and literally build a wall around a figure candle. So I'll have the male or female candle, depending on how they identify. And I'll take a wall of things like bitch be gone or goofer dust and graveyard dirt and brick dust and black salt and snake venom and ground glass and things like that, and make a circle around the figure candle. And then I will put protection devices like the demon's head or black stones all around that and create levels of protection, and then light the candle up. And then I'll usually do quarter candles on the altar as well, so that they are protected from all directions. And that usually takes a few hours to completely empower and work that ritual. But there's also just the fiery wall of protection candle, which conveys a little bit into a smaller dose. But the idea behind that and the fiery wall of protection oil and spray is when we feel vulnerable in some way, this erects an immediate shielding, an angelic shielding around you, so that you then become safe.
Now, for those who, may not have the dirt or the broken glass or the spiritual know-withal to use those tools, I know we've talked about in class, and I've had some learning and on just surrounding yourself with light, right?
There's crushed red peppers, things like that.
So yeah, stuff you have in your cabinet. Creating an incense for these things or do not use, I don't think it'd be a good idea to use crushed red peppers in a bath, but
no.
But you have other protective herbs that can
rosemary.
be used.
Rosemary.
Yes, rosemary is a great one.
Rosemary and salt together work great.
And there was you produce a bath salt called La Limpia.
That's Karmic Mavens. Yes.
Okay. I absolutely love that salt. But intention part of this. Now I want to highlight the amount of work that Katrina into the fiery wall. So important to have that focus, that intention, in whatever way that you can have it. It's not, you should take it just as seriously as if you were doing it for another person, for yourself.
Absolutely. And one of the things about L'Olympia, by the way, backing up just a little bit, that I found it really useful for, I do ionic foot baths for people as part of the cleansing process. And once they finish detoxifying in the ionic foot bath, I use L'Olympia in a separate tub for them to rinse their feet in and soak for a minute. And that creates that protection all around them, because even when we're doing cleansings and taking good spiritual hygienic care of ourselves, we're making ourselves a little more vulnerable because we're opening up spirit. And so we need to be really mindful when we're doing energetic work on ourselves that we're creating a vulnerability, and we need to reinforce that with a strength. So yes, being mindful about what we're doing and treating it as though we're treating a very dear and precious friend is how we should always engage self-care.
Absolutely. That protection piece before your session and after, I really appreciated how you highlighted that in our class. You know, not going straight to social media or whatever the case is after doing a session or after having a vulnerable moment. It can be nice to want to check out, but you're probably still very open and vulnerable, and understanding that screen time pours into you just as much as if you interacted with another person going through their stuff. I mean, you never know what you're going to this stage when you open up your phone. You have no idea what notification's going to be there that's just going to send you over the edge. So taking that time, taking that space, you know, using your sprays, using your smokes, using your baths, whatever, to reinforce that protection is invaluable.
It really is. And, you know, we're not wired up as humans to process the emotions of so many people. And by engaging social media as we do, it has absolute benefits. It lets us stay connected in times of separateness. I've been able to stay close with some of my family that's thousands of miles away. I appreciate it so much. I love social media. But we also, like you pointed out, are then vulnerable to the feelings, every fleeting thought of anybody else who's on our friends list or in our social media field. And processing all of that is just something we're not meant to do. Our neurology is not wired up to handle that much emotional input.
And when you think about psychic attacks, right, I'm always talking to my clients about how they come from without and from within. So you hop on social media and you see someone and you're struggling with their success as your own. Guess what you just did to yourself?
Right.
You know, or you happen to catch a glimpse of a story, a comment, or whatever that involves you, and you don't feel accurately represented, or it is
And then
just plain old hateful.
gotta respond, gotta engage.
What do they call them? Keyboard samurais or something like that. You come in, keyboard sniper, and you come in, you jump back.
Cap lock on.
Exclamation point. How many of these can I put
Emoji.
Yep. So many forms of expression that count as a psychic attack. And so
very true. And speaking of psychic attacks, that's another place where the fiery wall of protection and other protection devices are so important, because right now there are all sorts of feelings, all sorts of raw emotions and experiences out there in the world, and people are on a hair trigger. People are just flinging stuff back and forth, right and left on each other right now. And so I've had a lot of people coming in for protection from psychic attack and using mirror boxes to contain or to reflect back what's going on, using those black stones to ground down any incoming energies. Lots of things we can do to take care of ourselves in that regard.
Absolutely. And, you know, of working with these psychic attacks and things like that, it's important for people to understand that it's not a one and done thing. Like if you go and live on a mountainside in a cave, you will probably still get psychically attacked from the person you wronged in kindergarten.
Look at that bitch living in a cave. What does she think she is?
I don't like the way she sits.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to happen. And so, you know, being meticulous, well, not meticulous, because nobody's meticulous about protection really, but, you know, having awareness for when the buildup is just too much. We're always like, I think our favorite word on this show is management. And so as you are going through your cleansings, if you have up and you piss somebody off the night before and you're like, damn, I did all this work and here I am again. Okay, do it again.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
If you're
I've got people that come to me a couple times a week for cleansing because they're constantly in the line of fire. And it's like you said, manage that shit. Don't sit on it. Don't pretend like it's not happening. get up and take care of it.
Absolutely. And you know, if you're doing that fiery wall of protection candle and you get a little black soot at the top, celebrate it because it's working. Yep. And then buy the next one because you're probably gonna need more.
And like you said, it's not one and done. You know, sometimes if you do the cleansing and you get the worst of it out and you start to feel better, that's fine. But sometimes getting most of it out, there's still little things that are going to float to the surface later and now need to be managed in some way. I think of it like when I used to clean the bottom of my aquarium with the vacuum pump. You know, you get in there and you clean up the worst of it, but man, that water is going to be a nasty.
And then you get when you dug it really far down in there, and you'd be like, wait a minute, I didn't even know. Right. The nastiest things would rise from the bottom. I used to work for a pet store. It was disgusting.
It is. And those fish are like, dude, why did you have to? We had that buried. And here you are with your little toy jacking up our floor.
It's wild. It is absolutely wild. But like I've been saying, it's about management. And you know, if you're in the process of invoking justice, guess what you're going to need? If you're in the process of holding space for other people and realizing that you know, if you don't, you're not obligated to anybody. It doesn't matter what they did for you. Everything is an absolute choice. And as I'm saying this out loud, I can tell you 1,000 different situations where I felt obligated and did it anyway. So, you know, not coming down on yourselves for that. But management means, wait a minute, I might have said yes, and now I kind of need to pull back. I need to reverse course on this. And if it's not a absolute no, just a, hey, you know what? I know I said I could. Can we revisit this in a couple of hours, couple of days, and going from there? That's part of the process as well.
It's kind of like sex. I mean, I said no. I said yes this time. That doesn't mean
this time
I'm going to say yes every time. And I'm not obligated, you know, to talk to you every time you feel a certain way. And the other side of that obligation is you are not obligated to share with somebody. Yeah. You know, when people come to you, like, I can tell you're hurting. I'm here. I'd really like to hold space for you. That doesn't mean you have to spill your guts if that's not where you're at right then. Just thank them and move along. There's no obligation in holding space ever. Ever. And the only obligation is that if you get tired of hearing yourself talking about your situation, or you get tired of hearing yourself bitch about your situation, there's a real good possibility your friend's real tired of it too.
Awareness and management. You know, we've talked about some of the tools to use for protection and baths and things like that. And, you know, Katrina has great rituals and dedication and integrity with her work. Reaching out to her for services, you would not be sorry. I want to highlight here, if you're out there, because I get a lot of this from TikTok, people coming in and saying to me, well, you know, I need this particular crystal for protection. And there's a couple different things. So your crystals are like your friends, just like Katrina said. They're doing a lot of emotional labor for you. So they need a break too. They need cleansing. They need cared for. And if you start to get into the realm of crystals within jewelry or wire wrapped or things like that, you now have to account for the metal that these things have surrounding them, because metal holds energy. I don't know if you found this, Katrina, or if you have any of this in your background, but how metal, to me, it seems like metal holds energy longer, which is why cities feel the way that they do, and things like that. If you go into an antique shop that has a lot of metallic objects from back in the day, it feels weird because the energy that they seem to sustain. Silver can be really awesome. It's very pure, but pure silver is hard to find. Copper can be grounding, but if you have these things surrounding your crystal, you have double the energy to scrub. So if you're rocking your amulets for protection because you watched a TikTok video or you watched something else from somebody else, realize again, it's not one and done. the the great protection crystals, if anybody is interested, are like Katrina mentioned, the black stones. You have a lot of the red stones out there are really great for protection as well. And then some other ones that are pretty common, like tourmaline. One that a lot of people don't consider that I use religiously is amethyst. If you see me wearing it on the show, I've had enough emotional labor. I'm done. Walls up.
I enjoy howlite as well. That's another one
yes.
that I'll just invoke that white off of the rock to just come and protect me. But yeah, like she was saying, if you're not giving your crystals a break, it doesn't matter what kind they are. If you're not giving it a break, you're doing a real disservice to that friend. So get that thing on some selenite overnight.
Yeah.
Or wash it in some clean running water, or put it out in the moonlight. Bury it for a week. Do something to give that stone a break from you and your madness. Because you know what you do.
Are abusing our ritual items and candle friends.
Don't be a bad magical host.
Great way to phrase it.
Yeah, if you want to think about Lumiere and the little Chip and the Mrs. So-and-so and all the things that come to life when the Beauty and the Beast leave, that's what your magical stuff goes. And they talk to each other and they talk shit about you if you're not taking care.
They're like, damn, I wish she would have put me down today.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Lord, I'm tired. I can't hold this emotional space for her anymore.
One good barometer for that crystal wise is raw tourmaline. It'll fracture right down the middle. It'll crumble. And I'm usually telling people one of my jokes is, if you see your tourmaline crumbling or getting real powdery in a situation, like if you're at work, run. Just just don't go back.
It's on. Malachite has the legend that if your malachite breaks, that the wearer is in danger. And when I was a baby witch, I was out with my friend Donna, and she was wearing this malachite that looked like a third tit. I mean, this thing was huge. It was in one of those little cages, and she was a little tiny thing. And she just had this giant malachite she was wearing. We were out just going to yard sales, having a good time. And she went, oh, and I said, what happened? She goes, my malachite, something snapped. And she looked at her malachite had snapped in half. And we looked at each other like, ooh, you know what that means, don't you? That means you're in trouble. And we're like, ha, 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 ha. The girl had a heart attack that night. And she lived. But yeah, I mean, didn't see that coming, did you, Dahlia?
Oh my God. No, I thought, okay, well, she tripped and it was a bad fall, and straight up. And the craziest thing about that, right, is the malachite deals with the heart chakra.
Well, it was hanging right there, right where the heart was. And she had been born with a congenital defect. So we knew that she was vulnerable in that place, but she hadn't had an incident or anything ever. And yeah, she was in her 30s and it just popped her. So yeah. So I'm telling you that your stones will pay attention to what's happening with you.
Yes, they will. And they will tell you. So I had heard the legend of Jade, which is, as it's absorbing toxicity on your behalf or protecting you, that it'll change with turquoise.
Interesting.
And if either of those break, you're in trouble. So but mostly what I come across in my practice is people talking about their jewelry breaking or falling off. And I certainly have had an incident like that myself. Was at a psychic fair. They're depends on the psychic fair. They are touch and go. But this one happened to be in a convention center. Early in my woo-woo career, I was helping a shaman friend. And I'm moving stuff for her. I had my sleeves all the way down, my coat over my bracelet. The bracelet was for health, wealth, protection, and abundance or something. And I'm moving things around and it just fell off. And when I picked it up, it looked like it had been cut. Like the
Wow.
string was not frayed as a snap would be.
Mm-hmm.
It looked like it had been severed, and I was like, nope. And I ran right back to where I got it. And I am on my 3rd generation of this bracelet because I do not want the heart attack or anything related to it.
Not at all. In front of our house, we had, for protection, of course, these gigantic, and I can't make my hands go big enough in the frame to show you, but these were like 3 foot, 2 foot boulders of obsidian in front of our house. And we had, I think, 3 of those across the front to absorb negative energy that came toward the house. And we're looking in the pictures after the fire. We're like, check it out. The obsidian's still there. It's still round. It's still perfect. It's still there. Eric goes up there to get one of them. And the second he touched it, it just went and just shattered into all these little nuggets of obsidian.
Oh no, it was like, no more work, I'm done.
Like, well, you failed. But no, he brought 4 or 5 of those home. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of our little obsidians up there.
Gosh. Now that's interesting having those boulders. When my guru who came over from India, I met him 2 years ago in teaching prana shakti healing modality. In talking to us about protection, he was very much about size and weight of the crystals. So he was like, yeah, 35 pounds of tourmaline and you're set. And I was like, wait a minute, what mountain do I get that from?
Right.
But he was like, nope, it's the only way it'll work. And I was like, dude,
tourmaline's $26 a pound, bro.
He was like, no, I'll hook you up. And I fully believe, like, seriously, if you can find it, go for it. But man, size and weight of these things. One of the things that I often find myself talking about with regard to protection is not just the tools, but what we're doing for ourselves. And one of the highest aspects of protection being not the fear, like, oh, what could come, but the knowing of what you can handle, the knowing of who you are, so that when the psychic attack or whatever comes your way to say that you're less than, to say that, you're incapable, you're lazy, whatever, you already know you're not. You may have a moment of weakness, but for the most part, you're like, you look around and you're like, no, I'm capable of a lot of things. Much like in your situation last week, you were mentioning about the suicidal thoughts. That was probably maybe a moment of protection for you, and knowing that was not you.
It was. And the way that we get to that place is by constant meditation and keeping your own energy clean. So you know your worth, you know who you are, you know that you don't need to have racing or destructive thoughts that happen. So that's a side effect of psychic attack quite a bit, is causing a person to distrust themselves or to feel less than, as you pointed out, and to go down that road. And if you're somebody who's always depressed, you're not going to notice these things. But if you are not in that space and all of a sudden it comes up, at first it can feel like, okay, well, I'm having a down day, or I should have taken my B12 this morning, or whatever that might look like. But then it's a bridge too far. Then it gets to the place you're like, wait a second, this isn't me. Just like you said, if I'm getting a lot, it's not that I'm egotistical, but if I'm getting thoughts that don't define me in my terms, I know there's something else going on there. And being in the public light, you're going to get hit all the time. It's just
absolutely
part of the job description. And you just got to know when, okay, time to take care of this, because, apparently somebody got froggy.
Yeah, well, and even outside the public light, if you happen to be, I tend to people who, I don't know a different way of saying this, so I'll just say it, like, their energy, their aura resonates only with absolute truth. And so these people, when they enter into a situation, it's chaos. Everything that isn't working just starts to reveal itself. Things start to around them, not in the sense that they've messed something up, but the systems that are in place cannot handle them And so then they get attacked from coworkers or from situations, and it's like, God, we always have to talk. And, no, I know we said we wanted change, but you're doing too much. If that's you, you're getting psychically attacked, whether it's intentional or unintentional. And nobody needs to be over a cauldron to send that energy your way. They just have to be focused.
Not at all. And there are, like you said, those people that you never speak to them, that they're not in crisis. That every time you connect with that person, there's what's the latest drama? Well, here it is. And it's not necessarily their impression is I've got a cursed life. When really it's that they don't feel alive or connected or real if they're not engaging in some kind of battle. And so are they being psychically attacked? Maybe. But it's like a parrot, just bark, psychic attack, bark, I'm getting attacked, bark, just every time you turn around, yeah, I'm sure somebody has nothing to do but sit and just poke a doll at you. And you clean them out and their egg is clean and they just don't even believe it. Well, no, I know I'm under attack. Well, no, you're just making really bad life choices over and over and over and over again because you are attached to the drama of that.
Right. Life doesn't feel alive.
Right. They're very bored when everything's okay. Or they've been in such a state of emergency that when everything is okay, they're sitting and waiting, braced for the next thing, which invokes the next thing immediately. That then becomes the next thing. And it's really hard to get people to engage fully in the moment. One of the things you mentioned on some paperwork you recently submitted to me that shall remain unnamed is your definition of being grounded. That was the purest, most beautiful definition of grounding I ever heard in my life. Do you remember what it was? Can you?
I hope I do. I wrote it, right? Like if I didn't phone it in, I remember.
You were right there.
So for me, and what I was taught, grounding is completely showing up fully in the moment. So you're here, you're present, you're now. You're essentially in that completing the circuit between the earth and spirit. So it's almost like the way that I see people sometimes is there's a column of light that comes down and it connects here. And at that point, they're fully there, they're fully with you. And you might have these points of lucidity in different conversations, but that's being grounded when you lose all sense of time, when you are just engaging in the present moment, you're just here, you're just now, and you can deal with Mother Earth and Father Sky and all of that. And I'm making it a bit more flowery than I said.
No,
but,
it's beautiful. That's exactly what I loved. I loved that description. It just spoke of you're the youest you're ever going to be. You're completely here. You're very engaged in the now. You're very engaged with as above, so below. You're in that moment of pure existence and being here. And you're undistracted from anything else that might be pulling and tugging at your energy. And I loved how you put that. That was absolutely beautiful.
And it's important to highlight we're all capable of that. Like Katrina said, it's a muscle that can be built with meditation. Whatever meditation looks like for you, drawing yourself into a focused place of present momentness. And wait a minute, are you still teaching that meditation class?
Yeah, every other Sunday.
Yeah, so if you find yourself in California, go and take
on
that
the right
class
Sunday.
with her.
Yeah, and it's for people that are remedial in meditation. I mean, people that are good at meditation will do fine, but it's really focused on people who can't meditate or say that they can't meditate, so that I can remove as many distractions as possible and get them completely focused on the process of going inside and exploring a little bit.
Yeah. And there are great resources out there, both virtually and in person. One of the things I was coming to awareness was I was struggling with meditation last week. And I realized that I was trying like I hadn't, there was something that I hadn't eaten, or I didn't have everything that I needed vitamin wise. And so realize that sometimes this concept of meditate is biological. And so coming to awareness of that, it could be that maybe you just don't know, you need to have a conversation. I know both Katrina and I are available for questions here and there, the consultations. I think you're still doing the Zoom consultations too for folks as well.
I stopped doing those actually. And the reason I did is people kept signing up for Zoom consultations when they didn't know what Zoom was or how to operate it. And so I spent most of my Zoom consultation in tech mode, which made me crazy because I would go up, I would get all excited to be there and be, in my healer mode, because I spend time in prayer and cleansing before I work on somebody. So I would get all ethereal and everything. And then it's like, shit.
You got to ground.
Now I got to tell them how to work Zoom. And it was really interfering with my ability to be present for them, because we would get them present and I would say, okay, give me a minute. I got to go up. And so I stopped.
Well, I think email's still available.
Email like crazy.
Right. And I, of course, have those available options for questions as well. Christina is saying, so you teach us how to have our mind on a leash. In a way, but I'm going to say, oh, take it off the leash. Like, let it run.
Exactly.
Like any animal that's on a leash is.
How to train your mind so it doesn't need to be on a leash.
Right.
It doesn't go off and attack people and pee on the carpet and stuff.
Right. The best animals that I've had the honor of having as part of my life have been great off-leash pets, like my current dog. I mean, she speaks the king's English. I'm like, hey, go do what you need to do. She does. She comes back, and but when you put a leash on her, interestingly enough, she gets weird, and she's all over the place. She's inattentive. She's anxious, and so Christina, no, take your mind off the leash. Let it run. It wants to roam.
It has things to tell you. It has doors to show you, to open that you didn't even know were there. It'll tell you, let's go down this hallway. And you're like, what is this? I never knew this was here. How do we have a whole wing on this house that I didn't know about?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, as far as our conversation today and what was going on last week, both on the East, both on the West, we can summarize this to say, be careful what you're asking for when you're invoking justice. Be aware that justice is blind. And so know what you're asking for. And if you're not sure, shoot that email to Katrina or I, and we'll ask the right questions, to kind of get you in a different headspace. If you are experiencing emotional labor, if you're holding space for other people, be aware of yourself. You're not obligated to speak. You're not obligated to hold that space, and manage, and protect yourself from these things. It's important. Psychic attacks cannot be prevented. Curses cannot be prevented, but you can manage through it all with your talismans or your amulets, with your magical workings, with candles and different spiritual tools. But at the end of the day, it is very simple to choose any direction and navigate down that path of protecting yourself and managing your emotions and your expectations. And don't come down on yourself when you can't, because even I think both Katrina and I have moments where we're beating our head against the wall and we're like, what happened? And then you have that conversation with your person and you're like, oh, I did what I advised people not to do. Okay, all right. Yep. Time to recoup.
You have to have somebody who's willing to say, you're doing the thing.
In any case, we have had a great evening with you guys. Thank you for engaging. Thank you for the comments, and thank you for joining us and spending this time. because you
Lots
didn't
of
have
great
to, but
comments.
you're
Wow.
here.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you for engaging. And well, as I always say, we'll put this back in the fridge until next week. And we'll catch you all next time
Catch you
on
next time.
Crossroads of Cognizance.
Bye-bye.
See ya. Bye.